Dr. MParichuri, during this final segment, let's see if we can deal with some of what we've already identified as current economic problems, understanding that the issues that we're facing now seem to be long-term in a real sense, and that there has to be some kind of suggestion in terms of what do we do and some of the issues that are involved. Now, let's talk about it from that perspective.
Okay, we were talking about the financial institution problem and all that. One of the important things which the Fed should do is regulate lot more stringent regulations for these bankers and also other financial institutions. Don't forget, everybody thinks Merrill Lynch is one of the greatest, biggest company in this country, biggest brokerage house and the investment banker. If you look at it, very recently they have written off billions and billions of dollars as tax losses, along with the other major financial institutions. Whether you take a look at your neighborhood bank or the Bank of America or any one of these, Wachovia, which we have in this town, look at their losses. They are all enormous. And the question here is, who is going to be affected? It's the stockholder. And when the banks fail, or when the banks don't lend you the money, say right now they want to have the highest credit rating or the score if you want to borrow some money. Against. But when you go there, even if you are on the top list, top 1%, 2% list, they are very hesitant to give you the loan. So look at the demand for these houses, which are already depressed so bad. And when a good creditor, a good person with a good credit rating comes there, is trying to buy this house, what happens? The bank refuses to make the loan, and naturally the prices of these houses are going to be a lot worse. In places like Arizona, Nevada, California, there are some buses, the tourist buses going around these houses on the block. Auction block. So what happens here, and I hope it does not come to our side, that bad. Even here in Nashville, they have not really done any better. But the problem is not that serious as in these other states which I mentioned.
Would it be correct to say that if they're looking for confidence, it seems that the way the economy is now, that it's difficult for folks to not only get credit in order to purchase these houses, but it's also difficult for folks to believe that nothing will happen once they purchase these houses.
Yes, one of the important things is the confidence, the expectation of future incomes. Here, look at this. We have been having a dual problem. Not only our unemployment rate has gone up to 6.1%, on top of it, the inflation, which is the price increases, is also there. Normally they should go in opposite direction, but they have not. Now it's because the administration policies have not been in the right direction. That's my personal feeling. So what we have to do is something to make sure we suppress these price increases. Today, if you have bought a gasoline, for example, number of gas stations they have closed. They are selling only the premier gasoline and at an enormously high price. And if there is a shortage, or whether it is real or imaginary, or created by these three major oil companies, you and I as consumers do not have much choice. It is where the government has to step in. As a matter of fact, yesterday and the day before, a number of students and other friends have been complaining about the gouging by these oil companies, by these few oil companies, which is illegal. But the question here is, are we going to enforce the laws on these few individuals, or is the system itself is bad, especially the control these three companies have on you and I, the consumer. Do we have any other choice?
That's
Is
it.
there any strict rules and regulations imposed on them by the government? Now, when we say government control, we say, oh, socialism is no good.
All right.
The point here is what is good for the people. I'm not encouraging you that the government should get involved in our daily affairs.
But somebody's got to regulate and make that determination.
Regulate when things are out of control. Even John Maynard Keynes, who was the revolutionary economist during the FDR time, when we had the greatest depression. Until that time, we used to follow the hands-off policy by the government. But he has taught us, whenever the private enterprise system fails, it is the responsibility of the government to step in and try to help. That's why we got out of depression thanks to FDR. You know, they created TVA, they created enormous number of roads, very poor roads.
Bridges, schools,
bridges and schools were built. Infrastructure was tremendously improved. Who is getting the benefit of all that? So here, what I'm saying is, when the government gets in, when the private enterprise system fails, that is good for the nation. That's good for you and I as people.
As a matter of fact, it seems to me that there's no alternative. If private enterprise has failed, and the only other entity that could even do anything would have to be the government. And if the government decides to step back, then
government is the only source. That's the only. It's big enough to regulate them and also provide resources for you and I. Now, when the government got in here, you know, in the AIG loan, the $85 billion, it's your money and my money, it's our taxpayers' money. And while we are talking about that, look at what is happening to these governments, how they have been spending more than what they should. And number of other places, whether it is politically right or wrong, whether we are spending any money in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever. On one side we say, well, we are trying to protect their democracy. On the other side, we support number of these countries which are undemocratic. And they are, unfortunately, our allies. Now, somebody was asking me, why is it that we don't, today's class, one of the students was asking me, why do we help these countries where they don't take care of their own people? It's being in Swiss bank accounts of these people who are ruling or who are controlling their governments. So it is our problem. It is our government's problem. Now, government, what has it been doing? They have been borrowing money left and right. Our national debt has been getting closer and closer to our GDP, which is gross domestic product. What that means, which we all produce in the whole nation. Now, when our national debt is increasing, what it means to you and I is that we owe, it's over $35,000–$40,000 per person to these other institutions and the foreign governments and the foreign nationals, whoever buys our government certificates, our government bonds. Now, is that fair for you and I? On top of it, the tax structure, look at that, is more towards help improving the wealth of the richest folks in the country. The top 1% of the population, among the rich people, they get most of the benefits, and the rest of the population gets peanuts. How much money did you get, when they got the tax refund in the last time? And, okay, one good thing I would say is the recent incentive program, which they had, where they gave a maximum of $600 check to each one of us. Now, that's wonderful. But is that enough? That is the question right now. And this is where I hate to bring the politicians in here, and Senator Obama, for example. He has read this and tried to reform the country, reform these situations where
And because Dr. MParichuri, I'm sorry, we're going to have to break now because this is the end of the show. I've got about 3 minutes to thank you for coming by, and to also encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. We certainly hate to stop it there, but you know, it's a time constraint. I really appreciate that.
A lot of things which like to share.
But
Maybe some other day.
We'll have another time to share that.
But I really appreciate your inviting me, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
And hopefully the people who watch would benefit from.
Okay, good. I'm sure they.
You're